My number one advice for people, they want to create a brand, do one thing really, really well and present that one thing and say, this is what I have. There will be more, but this is what I have because I've given everything to this. In the beginning, I wanted to have a whole array of things and to drop it all at once for that like, whoa effect of like, there's so much and so much thought put into it. That's fine, but it just delays everything. If you're like a perfectionist type of person, it's just maybe you'll do it justice, but I think you'll always be a little critical. And so if you just allow yourself one thing, focus on one thing and just put it out there, all that emphasis on getting it out there is done, and all the relief that you'll feel, you can then move on to the next thing.
Jordan, thanks so much for being here, man.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
I'd love to start with something that I've kind of been, in a way that I've been starting a lot of these recently. But by asking you a question, basically. And, the question is, what would you say is what are the main things we need to know, or the earliest context we need to know about you to understand who you are and what you do? It's a deep question.
Going for it, yeah. I think my perspective on life and business and everything is based on just collected experiences, and being a married person, growing up in a small town, now living in a medium-sized city and having that experience. And I think it's just a collection of experiences, and knowing me, I'm the first to say that I don't want to talk about myself, but in this context, I do want to share that it's, a lifetime of refinement and friendship and relationships, and everything that you're around is who you are. So truly a product of experience and environment. And I want to be someone that I think gives, and being a married person, my wife is the most sympathetic person that I know, and I think I've learned a lot from her, and being married for 10 years this year.
Wow.
It's been a wonderful experience, and growing up in a loving family as well, and trying to bring into the things that I do a level of empathy and just service. And so like now being in a retail format in my business and with a cafe, having all those experiences, bringing that into business, it seems like something that brings me joy, is to just sharing those experiences with people, whether it's over a coffee or providing something that I've made by hand, or I've told a lot of people that now my career is experiences. So creating experiences or creating an environment for people to have community. That's who I aspire to be, as someone who's in that day to day, creating experiences and sharing in that too. My favorite thing about our business is seeing others interact.
Yeah.
I love to interact with people, and I love being a host, but just seeing people bring their buddy by and sit down in the shop and just catch up together with no context about like where they are. They don't really, it doesn't matter where they are, but like seeing them in that space together is really important. Hopefully that answers that question.
No, that's good.
I kind of diverted a little bit from myself. I know.
No, that's good. So maybe for some more context around who you are, the earliest that I knew of you and what you were doing was Foxtrot, probably 2017-ish.
Yeah.
You had, the shop over here.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
And you had kind of gotten started mainly doing leather work, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so then the leather work transitioned into more of a retail space as a whole.
Yeah. So the timeline of Foxtrot was, started in our, my wife and I, our loft in Midtown in our second bedroom. in the evenings after I got home from my job at an engineering firm. And it was just an outlet. It was an outlet at the time to put myself into something that I was interested in. It was a curiosity. So started with a belt at the time that I was replacing from a belt that my mom had gifted me from high school that had lasted me all these years, and here I am as a seemingly an adult that needs to be, I need to have a functioning belt to hold my pants up. And so this belt had busted that was gifted to me a long time ago, and the curiosity in me was like, let me look into this. I think I'm ready to start like researching things if I'm going to have them in my life. And so the whole story started with that idea of what things do we have in our life and what value do they hold? Like, we can have lots of things, but like, how long are we going to have them? How long are we going to hold on to them? Are we going to give them to our kids? Are we going to pass them on? Do they have that like really great value? And so I started diving into this, mindset or mentality of buy it for life. And in my case, I wanted to make things that hopefully would last a long time too. So it goes hand in hand with, buying or making things that I think will be around for a long time. And that in itself is value to me, that it makes me happy and it like serves a great purpose and it doesn't hurt a lot of stuff in the process of being made. So that was the origin idea, was just making a belt. It was the belt itself that I made was really crude and not awesome looking, but it held up, and that started the idea of maybe I can be, creating things that would bring value to people's lives. And I love the idea of like having something for a long time. For a lot of people that could be a well-made guitar that's passed down, or maybe they already have their like grandfather's guitar or something. Those things to me are like the coolest, because there's so much like emotion in that and like so much power and nostalgia and everything. So for me, I was constrained by space. I was in a small loft in Midtown, and we had a second bedroom. And so I thought to myself, this seems to fit where I'm going, and what I'm thinking about was, small scale goods like leather goods. And so I started with that, and it just kind of grew from there, just being curious about what else I could make, and buddies and friends wanting something as well. So, wallets, lifestyle goods, and that's what created Foxtrot from the beginning, was a desire to make things that last a long time, and the mercantile aspect of like having a shop that's centered around something that's being made. I've always loved that idea, because it does kind of evoke a old school kind of like mercantile shop where, in some cases, like I think the most romantic shop in my brain would be like a ceramicist at a wheel and like the back of like a little shop in like New York City or something, and they're like serving espresso or something, like a 2-person shop. Probably because I've seen that on like a show or something, that like my mind attached to that. But back to like the Foxtrot story, just putting those things together, and then it became very apparent that this gave me a lot of joy, brought me a lot of joy. And then to see now, like especially now after years of this, someone will come into the shop and they're like, I bought a wallet from you like 6 years ago, and they show it to me and they're like just looking at it, and I'm like, this is so cool. I get to experience this now afterwards, and to have come around the other side of it, and it's been holding up, and they're showing me, and it's joy that they've gotten out of it too. Currently, with Foxtrot, I've taken a little bit of a step back because I brought wholesale into the mix, where I was producing goods for a long time, and I think I just started to feel a little bit of the burnout of diving a bit too much into that, and it started to eat away at that original joy. So what I'm doing right now is giving it some time and space, and it's kind of pushed to the side. It's on hiatus, if you will, to let that come back to that original feeling of joy again. I want to create again. I was just producing a lot, and I think losing sight of the original idea that what what created it in the early days was kind of lost.
Yeah.
So yeah, currently Foxtrot's just hanging out, and I'm having ideas, but I'm just taking the time, I think, for myself to experience or just realize what is that piece again that made it so special. And then, fast forwarding to now, putting my time into our new shop, Garden House, that Emily and I are doing together, which is also very special to me. Like, I always wanted that for my life. Like, Foxtrot was kind of just myself doing this. And Emily, obviously helped, and I had a business partner, and we had employees, and now it's, boiled down to, it's just on the shelf. But the plant shop idea, that was created in like 2018, and it was just centered around, like, there's no cactuses in the Midwest, and you can't really go to a store or shop and find like great, like, huge cactuses. And so Emily and I just put our heads together and said, let's just go source those and bring them to a small shop. So we just built out a shop out of our garage behind our house in Rosedale. So simultaneously at that time that you were talking about, 2017, both of those things were going full force. Emily and I were doing high and dry on the side, just like opening up our garage on the weekends and inviting people to come in. And that was so special and so sweet to us because it was very intentional and sort of intimate in a way. So, like, I think you and Jess came by one time.
This guy?
Yeah.
I've actually gotten 3 from you guys.
That's awesome.
And I got them all before you had them in the other place.
Yeah.
I got them at your house.
That's
so like
awesome.
literally like pulling up to your house and like you had the van.
Yes.
In the side. And,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I don't know where we are. And we had never even been to Rosedale at that point.
I wanted it to feel like you were transported to somewhere else.
You did it.
So yeah, that was a special time, but I'm trying to keep the timeline like coherent here that, we were doing this thing on the side, Emily and I, of the plant shop behind our house, and it was very appointment-based only kind of thing, so people could only visit during a set amount of hours on the weekend. And then 2020, we closed down our shop here in the Crossroads. And not long after that, my neighborhood friend in Rosedale, he owned a super cool building that I had known about. And we had chatted at times about what would it look like to build high and dry into that space. And I said, I got too much going on. There's too much space here. It's cool, and I'll help you try to find a tenant. And I actually had talked to other coffee people in Kansas City about moving or doing another location there, being someone that, like, I'd go to other shops and just chat up the owners and stuff. So I hit up like a couple people in the industry, and they're like, they went to tour it, and I showed them around, and it was a blank space, and they said, I don't think I'm ready for Rosedale yet, which is really funny because, fast forward to now, we're doing that exact same thing, that idea of bringing coffee to Rosedale. This specific part of Rosedale, there's no other retail necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's very much just kind of a sleepy part of the city, but it's not far from the city, the city center where we are now. Started building Foxtrot into that space not long after closing this location. And having always loved coffee and always having it kind of tucked away in my mind that I'd love to have like a cafe / retail concept and then also be making goods there. That's what we set out to do. And I built out the cafe with the mindset of bringing in a friend that I've talked to about this idea for years, Zach Tarhini of Meta Coffee Roasting. We had actually chatted about this idea of doing a cafe / mercantile concept for years, ever since I moved here. I had gone to Nature Zone and found his bag of coffee on the shelf, and I'm like, this looks like this would be a micro roaster here in the city, because it was hand stamped, kind of reminiscent of like early Oddly days of, like, there's a element to this bag that caught my eye that seemed like hand crafted or something. So picked up the bag and looked at it, and it said his email and the date that it was roasted. It was like a couple of days before, and reached out to him, and the rest is history in just terms of, feeling this camaraderie of like small business ownership, one man shop at the time for his business and for me. And so, going to this location in Rosedale, I showed him what it looked like, and it felt like it needed a cafe. It's very much like a classic deli kind of storefront, cafe storefront. And so we hit the ground running, and that was November 2020 when I started renovating that shop, and July of the following year we opened as Foxtrot Studio with Meta Coffee operating the cafe. And so to this day, Meta is our only roaster in the shop, and but now it's called Garden House and Cafe, and we've kind of flipped the script on the space, and it's felt like a natural progression because I always wanted to have a home goods store and cafe, and Foxtrot was headed in that direction anyway. It was feeling more like a place you can go for things for your life, for your home. I've always carried, Norden out of California, like an incense brand, or Yield, or any of those other brands that have that really intact feeling of like, this is for your home. This is a beautiful object for your home. And so the transition from Foxtrot to Garden House has been very easy and very just a smooth progression. And now I'm feeling the passion come back in terms of just having a shop and being a host, and not feeling the anxiety of always making products has been healthy for me. So the latest is that I would love to bring Foxtrot back, but in the old high and dry space.
At your house.
At my house, and allow people to book appointments and have a one-on-one with me in this like mini little retail shop that Foxtrot will be. So I think that gets us up to now. It's a lot of like movements and changes, but also trying to accept that everything is always adapting, and if I've done anything well, hopefully people can be there to support me and keep up with what I'm doing, and that's been the most encouraging thing, is like, even though I think I've stumbled through this a little bit, I countless times get affirmations that people are there for small business. When you've treated them well, I hope that it reciprocates in the same direction. And so again, like the small business community in Kansas City is very special, and I've sensed that if you set out to do something well and you make a good product, or you take care of the people that come in through the door, they're going to see you through. And I've noticed that, again, as I've gone through all these changes, and people are coming into the shop, wasn't this Foxtrot? And I'm like, well, here's the story. And I outline the whole thing, and they're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's a lot of, changes or whatever, but it's always been like you and Emily, or just you, or, so like, as long as we're there and we're still doing what we're passionate about, I think people are following along, and it just takes time. So I'm allowing myself the grace to like feel what I'm feeling, adapt to what I am passionate about doing. And if I was experiencing sadness or pain with Foxtrot, allowing it to have some time to breathe and then reapproaching it, I think it can come back in a better way, in a more powerful way. And that's that's where things are at now, and I'm experiencing so much joy in this new shop, and having my wife there with me too. And she just finished her MBA, and she's implementing so much strategy that I've always kind of lacked in. I've always kind of fit in the creative element, where I'm kind of running around and like implementing things that I want to see in the shop, but like Emily is like really honing in on the business aspect, which is really helpful. We're making a great team in this new aspect, and yeah, it's been a joy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You know, I think what's unique about you and where you're at now is you've kind of, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, you know, about like Foxtrot just kind of became, it kind of lost some of its joy a little bit. You know, it became maybe something you didn't think it would become, or whatever. And I think a lot of people at some point feel that. And you've now made this transition, and I'm sure that there was a lot of emotion and, you know, processing internally and externally.
Yeah.
And you're just in this really unique moment right now where you've just now come through that.
Yeah.
You know, like, so
Yeah.
right now you probably still feel a lot of the weight of some of those emotions and letting things go and starting new things. And like, it's more real for you than ever right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to talk more on some of that. Cause I feel like it can really help someone who's like, maybe they're feeling what you were feeling, right? Or maybe feeling currently what you're feeling now, but they haven't decided to make that change yet, or they haven't, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like you can talk about it because you're like in it, even still a little bit,
Sure.
You know what I mean? And like, even the, like, I get the people coming in and be like, wasn't this Foxtrot? And then you feel like you're having to explain yourself over and over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I know that that's a part of it. And I know that with that comes emotion. And like feeling like you're having to like clarify what you do and who you are, and
my actions or my reasoning.
Yeah.
I think feeling the weight of that, or feeling the emotion, is really important, and allowing yourself the grace to not be overwhelmed. But I think it's just going to be you're going to experience whatever it is, but the difference, I think, for me is support in relationships. There's a lot of loneliness in entrepreneurship sometimes, and you have all the ideas and all of these things brewing, and sometimes, you know, you can go out for a coffee or whatever with your buddy and like spitball on ideas and feel that fellowship or camaraderie through that, especially if you have another small business friend that can like commiserate together or talk about the highs and lows. But even still, it can be a really lonely place, even if you have a business partner, or even if you're married, or you have partners or whatever, because you're constantly retooling or refining, and you're thinking and you're scheming, and you're not always going to have someone right across from you to like just bounce off of, because also I think you don't want to like burden someone else. And so I think the difference here was that I felt a sense of support that encouraged me to keep going and to just embrace whatever it was I was feeling. But it was a lot of stumbling, and I was feeling a certain way about where I was with Foxtrot, you know, a year or so before I started to make the moves to, you know, kind of back out of where I was. And that's also really difficult too, because I had a lot of wholesale clients. For those that don't know about Foxtrot, there's a great sense of identity in like building products for other small businesses. And I did derive a lot of joy from that, but it became a process of production that just took up a lot of time and wasn't really profitable. But like, you know, allowing myself to feel that I wasn't happy with, like, I couldn't see myself doing it for like 2 or 3 more years. And I think having the respect for the wholesale clients I had, who were also friends, and a lot of people in the Kansas City industry, whether I was making coasters for like bars or aprons or menus for restaurants. A lot of those places had become friends too. And so, I had to feel, there were some times where I felt like such a failure to those people because I'd been doing these things for a long time. And then I said, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm sorry. And here's maybe some other people that could pick this up for you. And they were, supportive, but, I felt like I had failed myself and failed others. But I also knew that it's a small thing in this like community that, we all go through things and we need to make changes. And what I kept hearing from people when I would lament this change that I was coming closer to is that they said, it's no big deal. Like, just keep moving, and it's not going to affect us if you can't make a coaster for us or you can't do these things. Do what's best for you. Do what's healthy for you. Do what's best for your friendships, your relationships. We're going to be your friend no matter what. Business is business. I think it took some time, but I wanted to sense, like, where does Foxtrot fit and where can it go to, because I've, experienced all these stages of growth, and it was a tiny business. It's not like it was a big business at all. It's just a true small business that I think made things, and the people that came to know us through like word of mouth and through the industry and here in Kansas City. And it's just a matter of trying to stay resilient and to know that you have support. But I'm trying to still, like you said, feel everything that I'm feeling. And people ask me, probably a couple times a week, like, when is Foxtrot coming back? Where is it now? And I'm saying, it's just in my head. I have all this stuff still, and it can all come back, but I want to give it space. I think that's the thing. Like, I think I'm kind of a person that can move on things pretty quickly, but there's a lot of stewing in my head. So like the disjointedness of where my head is and where my body is, where I can physically make things pretty efficiently, but like my brain is still stewing on things. It's all gonna have to meet up somewhere, and it's not right now. It's gonna be later on, and thankfully I have something else that's given me a lot of joy to experience that happiness right now, and I think that's going to give me the ability to come back to Foxtrot later on with a refreshed slate of ideas.
Yep.
Hopefully that answers those questions.
No, and honestly, I didn't really ask a question. I think I'm just, if nothing, just wanting to help process out loud, because I know like we're similar in that way of I can get really like, and I need to process up here, but I know for me personally it's so helpful just to process out loud in an environment where it feels like I can. You know what I mean? And I don't know, I just feel like, again, you're just in such a unique place that you have reinvented yourself a lot over the last, and maybe like to everyone on the outside it doesn't seem as like reinventing yourself, but I know internally to make a change, like from Foxtrot to Garden House, I know what that means internally. I know what that takes emotionally, and like processing with you and Emily talking about it, and like I can only imagine the behind the scenes, and most people don't get to know that, and not everyone needs to know that.
Yeah.
But I do think people who are in a similar headspace as you, who have a likeness like you do, and who are other small business owners, or who have something in their head that they want to bring to life but haven't yet for whatever reason, it's like just hearing how you process that and why you process it that way. Like, it's just helpful for people, And again, it's like being able to speak on the emotion of it is so crucial too, because there's so many things when you're in the middle of it that you can just speak to, because it's like you literally, you're in it right now. Like, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It still wasn't a question again, but I guess that's just kind of the conversation.
I think something that I'm thinking in terms of a response that I'd love to share is that, and what's helped me is because there's so much going on up here outwardly, and in the way people perceive you is they're not hearing that. They're not hearing everything that's going on in your head. So what's helpful is to just put something out there, to just start. It's a recurring theme in like how I've approached Foxtrot or Garden House is to just start, just do something. You can have this whole idea of how you want it to be presented, but only a small amount of that is ever seen by the populace or like the public or whatever. Whoever's going to be viewing your product or your brand or whatever, they're going to see little bits of it. So just give them something. I've talked to other people that, they want to create a brand and it has products or it has ideas or things to sell if it's a retail kind of aspect. And if I would go back to the beginning of either Garden House or Foxtrot, is just to do one thing really, really well and present that one thing and say, this is what I have. There will be more, but this is what I have because I've given everything to this. In the beginning, I wanted to have a whole array of things and to drop it all at once for that like whoa effect of like there's so much and so much thought put into it. That's fine, but it just delays everything because if you're like a perfectionist type of person, it's just maybe you'll do it justice, but I think you'll always be a little bit critical. And so if you just allow yourself one thing, focus on one thing and start it and just put it out there, then all that emphasis on getting it out there is done, and all the relief that you'll feel, you can then move on to the next thing much, much easier. That's my number one advice for people trying to just get into something.
Yeah.
Is just to put one thing out there. And so having felt that and experienced that and telling myself these things, I'm okay with Foxtrot going away for a little bit because I know when I come back, I'm going to refine one idea or one thing and experience that thing and shoot for that. And then that way it's back and it's this thing that's now back into the midst of, the small business community or whatever. It's also allowing yourself grace to just take your time with things. We experience so much, I think it's like undue force that we put on ourselves because everything is a comparison. And that could be social media driven or it could be our own communities. But again, I think if you can just do one small thing and that's your platform and you put that out there, then you're in a good place. Yeah. So, hopefully that's helpful.
No, it's really good. If you're open to talk about it, I'd love to hear, again, for the sake of people who might be in similar situations or whatever. I know COVID in 2020 and, you guys closing this space over here and, then that led to like there being some period of time where there was before Foxtrot and Rosedale opened. So there was kind of like a period of time in between, but I'm just curious, like, how did you process and what were you guys thinking through and what honestly led to the decision to like close the space, you know what I mean? And have no space until the other location in Rosedale was potentially ready. Like what was going on in your head? You know what I mean? What was your headspace to even make a decision like that?
Well, the impetus for that was a business partner change, which was difficult. And then, we took into account the state of 2020 and the way COVID had changed things. And, we had closed like the retail shop at various points when there were like flare-ups or whatever in COVID, and shifted to a little bit of mask making, which supported local sewists. And what was going on through my head was, um, I'm thankful to be supported by my wife and have friendships and relationships, and business is not everything in that case. And I was thankful to have my health, and like, humanity becomes like the important thing in that case. But in terms of the shift in the business, it came down to the ownership change, and trying something new. And for what was the reasoning to close was, I wanted to take Foxtrot back to the early days of just a studio concept. And so it was known as Foxtrot Supply Co., being a supply of like we had a retail storefront, and we wanted to supply things to people. I changed the name to Foxtrot Studio because I wanted to bring it back to a small studio, just allow myself the ability to create again based out of pure curiosity. And so ironically, that's where I'm kind of going again, because what happened was I got into the space, and the Rosedale space, and I needed to pay the rent and build out this cafe and do a lot of build out. So I quickly dove into wholesale to pay for all those things, and quickly found myself in this kind of state of, I'm doing a lot of production with a pretty small team. But going back to 2020, it was, we made things work. We shifted just like any other small business was at the time, shifting the way they did business, doing a lot of online sales. But again, I don't know that was something we necessarily wanted to do. Like, I think Foxtrot's always been a in-person kind of thing that's really special. I love the in-person mentality and the conversations that we'd always have, and we'd always take the time for those things. And so it just felt like there needed to be a change, and that's what ushered in the whole overall move. was those principles of ownership change, and then wanting to change up the mentality and the dynamic of the shop. And so yeah, that's the basis of it.
From a perspective of where you are now, right? You mentioned to the person who maybe is willing to start a brand or start their own retail space or start something online, even whatever. You've given the advice of just start, like being the big piece. But like, what else would you say to the person who's, in that place where like they have this thing in their heart that they really want to bring out for other people to enjoy, whatever, and whether it's practical, whether it's not practical, but like, what would you say to them? How would you encourage them, and how would you encourage them to think, and what would you tell them to do, and all those things?
Yeah, I think one thing that really stands out to me when someone is talking about starting something is when it's something that really stands out to me is when people come to our shop and just are very honest and open. That's always been something I really appreciate with people. Or if they reach out through, social media and are very honest and open about, this is what I'm going through and this is what I want to do. I think that ability to be vulnerable is really important, and just say, hey, I have a lot of questions and I don't really know the answers. And for us as a shop, and if I can be there as the owner, and someone comes in and they ask like, are you the owner, or is Jordan around, or kind of talk to someone about like, I have an idea. I love that because it is very open. It's very vulnerable. I don't know that when I was starting, I had the capacity to do that myself, because I felt so intimidated. But I would just encourage someone to just reach out to a small business owner and just kind of come alongside them and ask them the questions that you're thinking. And I would bet more often than not, they would be open about it because they've experienced that same intimidation or that same feeling of loneliness, or they're lost with this, but they also have that passion that they want to express. Mm-hmm. And so the small business owners have that passion, and they're going to feel, and I would say most times that someone comes to the shop and they have a drink at the bar and they're telling me their ideas, I start feeling excited for them because I know what it's like to have that drive or that desire to create something, and it's like all encompassing, and it's all you can think about. So sharing in that, I would encourage to just share in that. And if you aren't able to go to physically to a shop to ask someone or talk to someone, then just taking the time to write an email or just be open and just reach out. And if you don't have anyone, if anyone's listening or whatever, or watching this, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk. I was in that place, and I will say Chanel and Maria at Deer Society at the time were sort of my mentors, and that was my first place that I went to with a box full of my leather goods and said, would you want to sell these? And I was so intimidated because it felt like a huge thing, but they were the sweetest people alive. And at that moment, it all washed away from me because they were just so open and said, this is wonderful. You made this stuff, and asked me questions. And that was my first foray into this thing that I thought I wasn't sure if it was a business or if it was just a hobby. And it started to inform my next steps that I could do something with this. And it was just based on that experience, really, with Deer Society and them being so humble and so sweet and open. And in that moment, I was feeling intimidated, but I was also vulnerable. I'd made that step to do that. If I hadn't, then I don't know, where it would have led. So, taking those chances and just being open and vulnerable is pretty important.
Yeah, it's a big one. It seems to be a theme that a lot of people talk about. Is just like, what's funny is, again, I feel like I say this every time, but now that we're like 15, this will be 16 episodes in. It's like every episode has like the same underlying,
yeah,
like because we're still just humans,
yeah,
and creativity is just an expression, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like bringing a business to life is a creative expression. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's like it's just, I don't think I realized how the same we all are until having these conversations.
Yeah.
Because it's like everyone has said, like, just start and get something out there and get people's feedback and then use that. And then people have also said, reach out to someone, reach out to me, reach out. You know what I mean? Like people, like everyone has said, like, if you're in that place, like, shoot me a DM. You know what I mean? Like, because it's like we need that. And I think I don't know what the percentages are, but I would assume that the people who have people around them to encourage them have a much higher percentage of actually bringing those things out, And so sometimes there is community around you, sometimes there's not.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it takes maybe a little bit more intentionality on your part, which can be intimidating or seem daunting, but especially if you're in Kansas City, like, Jordan is literally the kindest, least intimidating guy. Like, seriously, you know what I mean? So it's like, there's so many great other people, even like, not just you, like, there's so many great business owners here with the same heart, the same likeness, the same kindness, who you should not feel intimidated at all to reach out to, because they, at the end of the day, just want a better place to live in too. And so it's like, we all want more people doing more things in Kansas City because we all live here.
Yeah.
So it's like, so if you live somewhere else, if you're in LA and you're listening to this, obviously find someone maybe in LA, or you can still reach out to Jordan from like the practical standpoint of things.
For sure.
But especially if you're in Kansas City, like, we want to live in a great place that has cool things going on with people who are intentional and vulnerable and and building things that they believe in a city they believe in. Like, we all want those things here. And so, especially if you're here, there's no reason not to reach out to the plethora of people who are building things here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's so important to hear those words. And, yeah, like for our case, like we don't have anything if people aren't going to them. And so allowing community to be built and being open to that and being vulnerable and just saying I'm here, and asking questions and allowing space is everything. In my case, I'm only a product of those things. I'm only as good as everyone around me, and I always say, always surround yourself with people who maybe intimidate you or maybe, and I've always said that I think everyone I do surround myself with is so much better at everything than I am, because it does kind of like, create a desire to always be better or get better or improve, and that's not to say like you have to improve. I'm just saying that it's good to sense community and aspire to learn.
Yeah.
I want to be a sponge, and I want to always absorb and learn, and from others that I'm around, I'm always looking to gain a little bit of knowledge from them, or maybe they are at this level of vulnerability that I wish to achieve, or humility. There's so many people that I look to, and I think I always will, no matter what, is just looking to be a part of some sense of community. And that is your resource. That is, that's your library. If it's not a physical place, it's people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay, so you've alluded to it a little bit, but you're in this place right now where there's been a big transition. The outside maybe sees the transition of just the name, right? But I know internally there's been a big transition. What other things are you processing for the future? Like, what does the next decade look like, and what do you want to see maybe happen in the next 5 to 10 years,
Yeah, I think what I want to see more when I think of Kansas City is in a greater embrace and an openness, an open path to small business, and a greater sense of community even in neighborhoods. I want there to be an encouraging path for people to pursue things. I'm not so worried about like where I'll be or where the businesses that I claim to run right now, because I think they're temporary. Because anything can happen. I aspire to have some semblance of small business throughout my life, I think. But in terms of like what I want to see personally, I think is a greater support for small business and better community. And I want to see places beyond like the activity, even like, we're in Crossroads right now. I want to see neighborhoods have greater sense of community in KCK and Strawberry Hill, or on the east side. I want to see people be accounted for, people be supported. And I think small businesses are those places of support for a lot of communities, whether it's, somewhere way out in the Northland, or it's in Waldo or wherever. People go places to feel like they're a part of something. And I don't want to see that change. I want that to get better, and I want there to be more of those opportunities for people. And so we may feel in our case, like a small business, that we're doing a little bit, a little bit is everything. So if everyone has an opportunity to feel like they're a part of something, that's all I really want to see in terms of like business or small business in my lifetime, is to see people comfortable in space, and to have opportunities, and to learn from others, and to have equity in their environments and where they live, and to be able to build equity is really important. I'm not so worried about where Garden House will be or Foxtrot will be. I think those ideas will refine themselves even more, or they'll have their time, and I'm okay with moving on to, doing other things, because it's all temporary, and I don't necessarily own those ideas or those things right now. It's just something I'm doing. I think the more that I am doing what I'm doing, I sense that people are everything. We're nothing without like the communities that we have and the people that we have around us. So I just want to see accountability and equity. Yeah.
That's good. It's really good. I mean, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know that you've, first of all, said some really great things. Thank you for being vulnerable.
Sure. It's still hard for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, a lot of the, and I think there obviously does need to be more of that, just people understanding that it's not always what it seems, it's not always what it looks like or whatever. And so thank you for letting us in a little bit to what, your headspace and, mindset, that kind of stuff. But, I think from my first interaction with you, would have probably been when we came through to High and Dry that very first time.
Heck yeah, I remember that.
And you and Emily, like, I think you guys gave us like a Mexican Coke or something, and like asked us if we wanted anything, and I don't know, like it was just obviously you guys enjoy hosting and enjoy creating spaces for people and environments for people, but even just to encourage you, like, you do that really well, and I know that you maybe know that you do it well because you enjoy doing it, but apart from enjoying doing it and getting people's feedback, you guys do it really well.
Thanks.
Like, and it's felt, like even that small interaction of coming to your garage in the back of your house to like buy a cactus. And first of all, we say like garage in the back of your house, but it was beautiful. You know what I mean? Like it was also intentionally done.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It wasn't like it was just a garage, space. It was like designed, and
that's what it was though. It was a garage. Yeah.
It was a garage. But still it was an experience and a moment. And I think that's a lot of what creativity is it's an act of service of creating those things for other people. And I think I even commented on one of your posts within the last 4 or 5 months. And I think it was whenever you had posted about maybe transitioning to Garden House. Okay. or maybe something about Foxtrot, but essentially you were just talking about through the transition and whatever, explaining the transition and how you were excited for the future, but whatever. And I don't know, I just felt like I just wanted you to know that like I also acknowledge what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, and I acknowledge the intentionality that you put into everything that you do, into the experiences that you create, into the environments that you build. And when we're doing those things, it can be fulfilling in the sense of like we're doing it because it's inside of us and we're expressing it. But I just also feel like more of us need to just hear that like it's actually good.
I remember your comment, and I remember the affirmation I felt was so intense. It was like, thank you so much. There can be all sorts of encouraging words, but like you saw me,
Mm.
so I really appreciate it. Or like, you said something to me that was just very affirming.
Mm.
I appreciate that. It's, again, it kind of plays into, we're all putting stuff out there and it can feel kind of lonely, but for someone to say, hey man, keep going or whatever, I see what you're doing and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think that sense of community that was really important in that case was to, be very vulnerable and say, like, I've stumbled a lot, I made a lot of mistakes, and I still don't even know if I'm doing it right.
Mm.
And you said, hey, I see what you're doing and I appreciate it. That was a very important time for me to feel, I could have, it was just a Instagram post. So not much just in terms of, it's just a thing that's out there
Yeah.
on a page. But to sense community through that was really great for me because at that time I was feeling a lot of pain and failure of, I don't know that this is even the right thing. And I'm just going to tell my story and stumble through it a little bit. But, I appreciate that, Noah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, I really do mean it. I'm extremely grateful to know you. Extremely grateful to
Same.
have had really great conversations with you and to again live in a place with people like you who are building the things that they're building and with intentionality and with the intent to serve others and with it's always about others, you know what I mean? And I'm grateful that there's a lot of people doing that here, and I'm grateful that, you're one of them and you've done it to the degree that you've done it.
Thank you.
So yeah, man, I just wanted to.
You're doing cool stuff.
Thanks.
Big time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, we talked kind of early on about, even I think before we were recording, just kind of the heart for this, but I hope that this can just be a conduit for more of these kind of stories.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I want to be able to hear the ideas and the heart behind other people that are feeling success and also people who are not feeling success.
Yeah.
I think it's just as important to feel the realness of even the struggle. Because I think at that point in time, you're more susceptible to there's highs and lows, but like in the low parts too, I think you can learn a lot more from that.
Yeah.
I think you're more susceptible to listening and it's a trying time. But like, it's also an important time to just feel that and know, you can seek out help and you can ask questions and we've all been through it. We've all been through tough times, of whether it's ownership of like what you're doing or what you're trying to do is falling apart in your head and to others they're like, no, you're doing really well. And just like hearing that is really important and really helpful, because we can build up our own narrative in our head of where we are in a certain point in time, and it's not even close to the perception of everyone around you.
Right.
So aligning, like refining your alignment of where you are in a certain point in time by just like putting yourself out there and even just asking, how do I seem to you? Am I doing this okay? Or getting an honest answer is really important too. Well, you're doing this or you're doing this and this is how I perceive it. Getting that perception from others, and not always like sitting in this place. And this is all like my own narratives. So a lot of people are probably not that way and they can just, move forward with grace and, be confident in their actions and build something. but others may not be so confident and like will critique themselves ad nauseum. I am one of the latter, where I will self, critique or, talk myself out of things for a long time. But at some point you just have to move forward. And so finding those, corners of support, or those places of support, whether it's a coffee shop or a church or a community center or wherever. It's just important to feel that you can do things and to build yourself up. So, yeah.
It's good. Well, thanks for being here. Again, thanks for sharing and being vulnerable, and I'm really pumped for what you guys are doing at Garden House and what the future of Foxtrot looks like, and but more importantly, just for you and Emily, and just as human beings, and as friends, and I do know that however you do it, the things that you want, from the perspective of, wanting more business support for business owners and whatever, like, I know that whatever that looks like, I know that you are going to do that. And typically when the burden that we feel, or if there's a point of burden or a point of frustration, it typically means it's something that we're supposed to fulfill.
You're feeling it, so you want to change it.
And so I have no doubt that whatever that looks like, and even up to this point, you still have been a resource for people, even just knowing that, like, up to this point, you've been a friend that can talk about business, or you've been a person who can talk about, like, people do talk to you because, you are very easy to talk to, And so I know that you're only going to continue to make not only your businesses, but people around you and other businesses around you better because of that. And so I'm just excited to see how it plays out, and see what you do and the impact that you have by living that way, And so anyways.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Excited to see all the great sit downs here and on this lovely couch that you'll have, and that I can learn from as well.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.